welcome to the UNIDO conference about women in industry and innovation. I'm Tonia Mastrobuoni. I'm the German correspondent for the Italian newspaper La Repubblica. And in the country where I live, Germany, I will start with the very bad news because 4 years ago, a law was introduced to push women in the boards of important companies that are in the DAX. And so some of them were obliged to hire 30% of women. And this happened in these companies. But in all the other companies in 4 years, no improvement has been made. So we have in Germany, 115 companies that has 0 women in the boards. And 75 of them declare openly that they won't hire any women in the future. So in the country that we look at, and I look at and I live it as an Italian, as a progressive country where a woman has been leading for 15 years, which is a role model for the women in the whole world, Angela Merkel, there is still a long, long way to go. And so now I will turn to the good news of this a very, very, I think, exciting session with 2 extraordinary women. The good news is that these women are the living example of the fact that men are lying to us when they say that they can't find competent enough women for their boards, for breaking this damn glass ceiling that is really suffocating women, especially in very male-dominated fields like business, like finance, like innovation, and like engineering, which are the fields where Reilly, Cayten, and Itani, the 2 fantastic women that I'm going to present briefly in short time, where they have become really role models. So I will introduce you first. Reilly Cayten. She is co-founder of a very important global initiative, Ocean 2050, a very also famous initiative to restore abundance in the oceans by 2050. And she's also a consultant on carbon markets and advisor of Javelin Capital. She is American, but I learned that she has been working in 4 different countries, in 4 different continents. She speaks perfectly Mandarin, she speaks Spanish. She has been traveling around the world to combine ecological sustainability with business and with services and with infrastructure. So with fields where it's not always, we cannot always count on a sensibility for climate change. So among others, I want to quote one of the many, many initiatives she started, which is Katrinka, a sustainable fashion accessory brand dedicated to providing fair employment and financial literacy for women and girls in developing countries. She is also a member of the board of the National Environment Education Foundation. And so her aim is constantly to be able to combine the climate change solutions with that could benefit emerging markets, and to put it philosophically, to combine the short view, which is very typical in predominant in business, in finance, in services, with the long view of serving the planet. And Megan, I would like to introduce you with a very nice quote that is also very, I think, perfect for this session. You said once that there is real value in women creating space for themselves with other women. So, Megan, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I like the long view and the short view. I haven't heard that before. I'm going to adopt that. And I agree, there is value in creating space, and that's why I'm here today. And I'm thrilled to be with all of you. I'm here speaking from California. It's a tad early, and I'm privileged to be with all of you. So I was encouraged to make this personal. I hope this is meaningful to you, and certainly happy to take questions or follow up with anyone via the app. I start my story 20 years ago in the year 2000 in a room in the Princess Hotel in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, where I was crying into a glass of honestly pretty bad white wine. I had just uprooted myself again, leaving my apartment in Washington, my boyfriend, my good white wine, and relocated indefinitely to a country I had never been to, where people spoke a language I did not, and where I knew no one. I did this with immense privilege, with a passport that got me access, confidence my government would bail me out, faith my boyfriend, now my husband, would wait for me. So not the way that everyone experiences relocation, but nonetheless, it was uncomfortable and I was very alone. So I had a conversation with myself that went something like this. You always do this. You uproot yourself. You relocate to a place where you feel alone and terrified. In a year, you'll know the bus routes from corner to corner. You will be stronger and you'll love it here. And in fact, that's how it turned out. Minus the bus routes, because I wasn't brave enough to take public transport. 2 years later, I left a piece of my heart in Honduras, and to this day, you will find me cheering on the national soccer team, even when they play against my country. So I tell this story because it's a representative of a constant theme in my life of throwing myself into the unknown, benefiting from the great generosity of others to welcome and teach and challenge me. It is liberating, particularly for women, to start afresh. I've created almost every job I've ever had. And while it can be terrifying at first, having no predecessor, especially no male predecessor, means I get to set the rules. I don't have to contort myself to fit into the expectations of what other people, usually men in the fields where I work, as Tonia mentioned, are used to doing things. And being alone in a new place requires you to listen, to learn from others, to get to know yourself really well, and to figure out how you can make a difference. And I know I'm speaking to an international audience, so I imagine that may resonate. Another story, I was the first woman to be a coxswain on the men's crew at the university that I went to, where the men's crew team is a storied institution going back to the 1800s. Coxswains are the usually little people who sit at the front or the back of the boat and tell people what to do. I am not little. I am, in fact, so tall that I could not cox boats where I would have to tuck myself into the front because I would have had to break my legs in half. Even back then, after starving myself, I was a good 10 pounds heavier and a lot more female than my competition. I got the spot because my rowers trusted me because I'd been a rower before, and I worked hard to compensate for what I didn't have with what I did. I couldn't be in the locker room, honestly, probably a blessing. I couldn't yell inspiring messages about body parts I don't have. But what I could do was listen, get to know them better. I knew their stats. I knew about their romantic lives. I knew what they wanted. I tried to understand what they were capable of so that I could really challenge them at key moments in the race. And I made it clear I was in charge even when one of them complained it sounded like his mom was yelling at him. At the end of the year, they presented me on a fork a used jockstrap, which is a male undergarment, which I suppose they said I was one of them. So I suppose that was the ultimate compliment. So it's probably clear by now that I won what American investor Warren Buffett calls the ovarian lottery. I was born with all the choices in life. My father is the child of immigrants without a lot of resources. He required his daughters to do well in school so we would never depend on a man. When I was growing up, the fundamentals all worked. The lights turned on, the water was clean, I had a roof over my head, access to doctors and schools. I could decide what to do with my life. When I grew up, I could vote in a system I believed was fair, choose if and when to get married and have children. That is not true for the majority of the people in the world, especially not for women and girls. When I ran Katrinka, a small ethical fashion company focused on financial independence for women, I bought pom-poms from an indigenous Tzotzil woman named Magdalena. When I finally met her in her front yard in Chiapas a few years ago in Mexico, she teared up and thanked me in halting Spanish, which was not her first language, for helping her. She left an abusive husband with no idea how she would feed herself and her kids, and knowing that her community would judge her for her choice. The amount I spent on pom-poms, which cannot have been more than a few $100s, was a lifeline to her when she needed it. I felt honestly embarrassed at that moment that something so small in my life had such a big impact on hers. Magdalena didn't have a formal education. She didn't choose her husband, but she chose to leave him despite the consequences and take control of her life. We talk a lot about empowering women, and to me, Magdalena freed herself. What I get excited about is helping to make the fundamentals work so that women like Magdalena have choices and can take control over their own lives. I found I'm the most effective at that work and find the most meaning when I focus on delivering solutions to urgent problems where I have something unique to offer, expertise or networks or resources or sometimes who I am. As an American, I have walked boldly into the world and taken up space, confident that others would let me in. I got a job as a bartender in 1999 in Southwest China. And during the anti-American riots that year, all the other Americans who were affiliated with institutions were evacuated. I had the chance to stick around since I didn't work for anyone who could tell me what to do, and witness history and figure out better how the world works. The bar owner fired me for being American, and he took all the Coca-Cola off the shelves. But when my flying pigeon bicycle broke down on my way to watch the protests outside the American consulate, the man who fixed it gave me a rose because I was the first American he had ever met. I tell the story to say that in general, the people I met around the world when I was young thought the US was on the right side of the history and gave me the benefit of the doubt. That is sadly no longer true. I've gotten away with liberties that would be denied to local women because I'm a foreigner. I'm almost often considered a third gender. I was Mr. Megan in China often. When I lived alone in Honduras, which the culture would discourage, people assumed I must be part male or maybe CIA, and left me alone. In my work developing infrastructure projects, when I come up against local expectations of rent seeking, I can feign ignorance or cite American laws, which is a luxury not afforded to my local colleagues. To me, the privileges come with immense responsibilities. I focus my professional priorities on making the fundamentals work and on what is most urgent. It doesn't get more fundamental and more urgent than the planet being able to support human life. That is the work I'm dedicated today, developing and implementing climate solutions. My country, more than any other, is responsible for the climate crisis. A quarter of the CO2 in the atmosphere came from us. We should be able to lead to solve the problem, as we did with the Montreal Protocol, when the US brought together 192 countries to phase out CFCs and fix the hole in the ozone layer. In case it's ancient history for many of you, it was 30 years ago, it worked. It's kind of miraculous, but it worked. We did it. And while climate change is much more complicated, and while it will touch all of every one of our lives, the good news about it is that we know how to fix it. We need to stop putting carbon into the atmosphere and suck out the excess carbon that is already there. We have the money to do it. A recent study put the cost at $50 trillion. That is obviously a very large sum of money, but it's a third of global GDP last year. It would cost a lot less to address it now than it will to respond to its impacts, which disproportionately affect those least able to bear them. Some of you may know that 80% of those displaced by climate change are women. My country is holding the world back in solving this existential problem, and we're pretty much out of time. As my colleague and friend Alexander Cousteau says, we cannot stop exponential loss with incremental change. She says that about the oceans. It applies to climate change. It applies to the land-based extinction crisis we're going through today, where I ask myself, do we really want to be the only species on Earth? Because that's where we're headed. Especially if the situation we find ourselves in is terrifying and no one has done it before, this is the time that calls for us to jump in and find a way to be useful. It will make us stronger. If we're successful, it will allow our children to take control of their futures in what we know will be an altered climate. We desperately need women to take more of a leadership role in developing and implementing solutions to the climate crisis. Collaboration, listening to each other, listening to science, learning, adapting, investing in the public good all come naturally to us. Look at how countries have fared with female leadership under the pandemic. It's crucial that people with different stories learn from each other and listen, so that it's clear that this is everybody's crisis and these are everybody's solutions. So my message to you is similar to the pep talk I gave myself 20 years ago. In the face of the climate crisis, you may feel alone and terrified. I often do. Tackle it head on, listen and learn, find a way to be useful. Know that this is something we know collectively how to solve, no matter what you've done in your professional life, what your identity is, even if you're a man. We need you, whatever your passions or talents, especially if you feel like you're jumping into the unknown and there's no precedent for what you're trying to do. If you can marshal your resources and figure out what your unique gift is, and figure out how to get what you want to do done, it will have an impact and inspire others to join addressing what is the most significant challenge that humans have ever faced. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan, for your inspiring, really inspiring anecdotes of your fantastic life. And I think that it is also very important that we have before the pandemic, we have been a whole generation of young people going on the streets in the whole world, Greta Thunberg and so on, for something which has science behind it. I mean, I was politicized when I was a young when I was young as well. We had ideologies to put on, to bring on the streets. But what they have is science, which is really much more solid and which gives us all hope for the future. So thank you, Megan. And I would like to introduce you our next panelist, which is Mona Itani. And Mona Itani, I hope I say your name well, is a Lebanese social entrepreneur, and she's also an activist. She founded Riyadh for Social Innovation 4 years ago in Beirut, where she lives. She is an engineer, and she teaches, among others, at the American University in her city, in Beirut. She's ambassador for the Global Compact network in Lebanon. And her work is as I understood, if I understood well, is much more, is much concentrated on how to link innovation and technology to young people. So how to promote young entrepreneurship, which in a sense makes society better, makes it social aware, more social aware, more social responsible, and of course, more sustainable, because also the climate change is a very important topic also to Mona. And what I also found very interesting, she has been focused, I mean, we're speaking of Lebanon, so of the Arab world, and so another world where maybe many sectors are male dominated. And she has been also specialized on focus on training young women, for example, with this initiative, Girls Got It. And she's sending, I think, a very powerful message to women and to young people in the Arab world. So I would like to introduce you, Mona, as well with your quote, that is a little bit a link between you and Megan. A lot of innovation is required, but if we must do innovation with a profit and a convenience mindset, this will be not sustainable. It won't last for long. Mona, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tonia, for the lovely introduction. And I'm gonna be personal, but not too much personal. I'm gonna have a message for everybody, and I hope everybody will link to it. So I would like to start off by saying that after I learned that I was invited to speak at this conference, I went, like every time, to tell my husband about it. And he asked me about the topic, and I told him it's entitled The Journey of a Female Role Model, with a small laugh following this. He looked at me and he asked me, why do you keep underestimating yourself? I mean, women tend to do that. We feel like imposters pretty much all the time, don't we? Maybe this is something that we need to change. Of course, we cannot just blame it on women themselves. But today I would like to focus on this internality, if I may call it. So my husband's reaction triggered in me a long thought process about whether I was really a role model, in what ways I was a role model, how do I define role models, what are their characteristics, and whether all of us are actually role models. For me, a role model is simply a person that we look up to, a person that we wish to imitate, and we want to be like them one day. A role model is influential, and he or she inspires us to become a better version of ourselves. Whether we like it or not, when we were young, we were influenced by the people who are closest to us, like our parents, siblings, teachers, relatives, and many times our friends. So if you think about it, all of us are role models at one point in time because we have this influential impact, whether it's to our younger brother or sister, a friend, a child, a niece or a nephew, a colleague. They will want at one point to imitate us and act and say like we do. Now, I want to talk about my personal journey. However, because I'm wearing this role model hat today, I also want all the attendees to make sure to reflect on their own journey and to see if some of my journey will make sense to them and applies to them as well. So I want to start with my role models. Apart from my family members, I was influenced by a classmate in my graduate studies who happened to be a female entrepreneur and role model herself. This was just the beginning of my very long journey in entrepreneurship, which I also chose as my PhD thesis topic. For my thesis purposes, I conducted in-depth interviews with over 15 female entrepreneurs, and I developed a close relationship with most of them. This did not only feed into my PhD research or thesis, but it has hugely impacted me as a person. It has inspired me. It has changed my views on female entrepreneurship. I discovered that they don't just care about profit maximization, that most of them have a goal that is also, in addition to economic sustainability and viability, real change. They have a message, and I wanted to be like them. And they were all role models to me. So the degree of this influence that these women tech entrepreneurs left on me definitely will put them in the category of role models. Moreover, when I co-founded Girls Got IT, which Tonia talked about, I founded it along with other inspiring role models who were older than me, more experienced, more established females who worked towards women empowerment in technology and in business. And working closely with them, having similar goals, having the same objectives, working rigorously to achieve what we wanted has changed the way I look at things and gave me tons of experience in the field. Through Girls Got IT, which is an initiative that has trained more than 3,000 girls in Lebanon to date on different skills in technology and engineering, I was also able to act as a role model myself by not just being on the founding team, but also being humble and active and going into the training rooms, interacting with the girls, and many times offering some workshops myself. I even am in close contact with some of these alumni who also took part in other entrepreneurship and social innovation programs which I offer. It's not just empowering to them, it's ultimately self-fulfilling to see this impact for me. I also design and run several entrepreneurship programs and always make sure to invite inspiring speakers and entrepreneurs to take part in these programs because the impact they have on the youth is immense. I make sure to always be attentive in these sessions because this is my continuous feed of inspiration. So, what are the characteristics of my role models? They are brave. They speak their mind, like Megan. They are influential. They are inspiring. They walk the talk. They have a strong purpose in life and a message to deliver. They do not hesitate to give back. They are humble and they are true to what they say and what they do. And finally, they are never boring for me to hear. They have always something new to say and a different perspective from the norm, a perspective that gets you wondering, thinking, and reassessing. As you can see, I always make sure that I am surrounded by role models because this gives me a drive to always keep growing, progressing, improving, and aiming to become a better version of myself. When I hear them and when I see them, I keep thinking to myself, they did it, so I can do it too. I'll tell you a small secret. I once asked one of my role models to be my mentor because who could be a better fit? I would also advise everybody who's hearing us to do the same. Now, going back to my journey, I have been teaching at the American University of Beirut for almost 10 years now. I started off as an ethics instructor. So I was teaching ethics. And of course, I had to be super careful about what I say, make sure that it matches with what I do. Do as you preach, we say. We all know this, but this experience has really shaped me and transformed me into a value-based person. When I moved from teaching ethics to entrepreneurship, I knew that the same principle applied. So I slowly found myself starting my own business, namely Riyada for Social Innovation, applying my learnings from my fellow female entrepreneurs, walking the talk, acquiring real entrepreneurial experience that I can then pass to my students with more confidence and real value. By becoming an entrepreneur myself, and not just being an entrepreneurship expert based on research, by being immersed in entrepreneurial work and its tiny details, its hard work and all its challenges, this has helped me greatly to deliver my message to the youth in a more genuine, more empowering, and much more convincing way. It is only after I really understood entrepreneurship by doing it that I found so many of the youth I work with getting inspired and doing real change, and many times thanking me for being that catalyst that helped them find their passion. help them find their entrepreneurial self, and believing once again in their change-making abilities, in their power to determine their future, and their ability to change the status quo, to fight stereotypes, and to simply draw their own destiny. My message to the youth is that they can be the change they wish to see in the world. They do not have to wait for miracles to happen. They have to create their own miracle. Now, I know this is, poetic, theoretical talk. So how do we do it? Through our meticulously designed programs at Riyadh for Social Innovation, we make sure that we equip the youth with the needed skills and tools through hands-on training programs, where they apply this theoretical talk and they make it become reality. We leverage on a large network of entrepreneurs. We bring them live examples, mentors, and speakers in addition to technical skills. And we show them that innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology can be a great way to create the change that they want and to make the world a better place, even if it's for a smaller degree. One example I would like to share with you is a social enterprise that emerged from one of our programs that promotes social cohesion in the Lebanese community. They called it khubz و ملح. This is an Arabic term for bread and salt. And it's a web-based platform that is really the Airbnb for local tourism that encourages individuals in Lebanon to get out of their comfort zone, to get to spend time with others from different backgrounds, from different areas and different beliefs, to have more social cohesion in the country, which is very much needed after many years of war. This project made it as a winner in the MIT Lebanon Challenge, which took place last month. And needless to say, I am super proud. Personally, I am changing the world by creating more and more change makers who embrace the same message, who believe in social innovation to be a powerful tool to solve the problem that they face in their community and societies, whether it's poverty, it's dirty water and sanitation. We can all bring innovative solutions to the table and not always wait for miracles to happen. Being completely immersed in this field has also influenced my children, who proudly considered me, like all children consider their parents, to be their role model. They could perfectly pronounce the term entrepreneurship, which is a tricky one, I would say, when they were still very early, very young. They knew all about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals or the UN 2030 Agenda. They know them by heart, thanks to a game that I developed for one of my exhibitions. And my daughter was bragging about her knowledge about the SDGs in her 5th grade, to the extent that her teacher invited me to be a guest speaker for over 80 students, talking to them about the first 6 Sustainable Development Goals, where they all had to create a project to help achieve one of them. So, if I want to end my talk with one thing, I would like to remind you that we are all role models. And I want to ask you, are you acting upon this responsibility? Are you walking the talk? And are you doing what you preach? We can all do it. And as we influence others to become a better version of themselves, we should never forget that we too should keep growing to be the best versions of ourselves. Thank you.
Voila. Do you hear me now? I'm sorry, there was a technical problem. Thank you, Mona, so much also for the inspiring speech and about role models. And I think a very important topic is also networking, because this is also what women should learn from men. Men are still much better in networking, which is very important and leads us to the red line of these conferences of UNIDO, which is how to promote women empowerment. I think we have only 1 minute left, so, and 2 only questions, which is also very specific. No, 3 questions. I think that maybe the best thing is if we send you the questions, it's only 3 questions via email, and you can respond to them, because I think no time is left. I would like to use this 1 minute left to thank you, to thank, of course, the UNIDO conference, and for you for your inspiring words, for your inspiring biographies. I remind you again, we're here with Megan, Reilly, Cayten, and Mona Itani, And I thank you both for participating to this conference, and good luck for the future.
Thank you.